Hello and welcome back to Ganga Education. On this platform, you will find quality lectures relating to the field of law, competitive examination in legal domain, important legal facts and legal history, all explained in clear and structured manner. In today's video, we are going to discuss important concept from the perspective of the judiciary examination for essay writing, that is euthanasia and legal provisions.
Okay, let's dive into one of the most profound ethical debates of our time, euthanasia. What does it actually mean to have a good death? This simple question is right at the heart of a topic that forces all of us to confront our deepest beliefs about medicine, about the law, and really about the value of life itself. So, to really get a handle on this, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll define what euthanasia actually is. Then, we're going to trace its complicated history from an ancient oath all the way to a modern controversy. We'll look at a key case study that raises some really tough questions, explore the core philosophical clash at the center of it all, and finally, we'll see how this whole debate looks from a completely different cultural perspective. All right, let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly are we talking about when we use this word euthanasia? The word itself actually comes from ancient Greek, and it literally just means a good death. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But its modern definition is way more specific. It's the intentional killing of a person whose life is considered not worth living. You've probably heard it called mercy killing. And this is where the whole debate gets incredibly nuanced. You see, we have to make some really important distinctions. There's active euthanasia, that's a direct act, like an injection. Then there's passive euthanasia, which means withholding or stopping treatment. And on top of that, there's the huge difference between voluntary, when the patient asks for it, and involuntary. Honestly, getting these terms straight is absolutely key to understanding the entire conversation. So this raises a really fundamental question about what a doctor is supposed to do. I mean, how did we get from a profession that is sworn to preserve life to one that, in some parts of the world, is asked to end it? The history here gives us some pretty unsettling answers. For more than 2,000 years, Western medicine was guided by this one single core principle, right from the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. It was the absolute bedrock of medical ethics, a very clear line in the sand. But this timeline, it shows a really disturbing turning point. Our source tells us that in 1939, a group of German physicians carried out an experiment that just completely shattered that ancient oath. They killed 4 mental patients. And that single event happened just months before Hitler's first direct order for a state-run euthanasia program. It was a profound and, frankly, a terrifying shift in medical ethics. This history leads to a question that really hangs over the debate today. Once you open that door to euthanasia, can you actually control where it leads? The modern experience of the Netherlands is often what critics point to when they explore this very idea, what they call the slippery slope. Now, on paper, the Netherlands set up some very strict guidelines. The request had to come directly from the patient themselves, it had to be completely voluntary, and originally, it was only for people who were terminally ill and in severe, unbearable pain. But the source material we're looking at highlights cases that suggest the reality on the ground could be worlds apart. This documented account points to a frightening gap between the official rules and what was actually happening. A patient was allegedly euthanized not just because she was incurable, but because, and I quote, they needed the bed. So, from the viewpoint of the critics cited in our source, the list of who was eligible for euthanasia in Holland just got longer and longer. It went from the terminally ill to the chronically ill, then to people with psychiatric conditions, and they argue even to involuntary cases. This is the very heart of that slippery slope argument. Okay, so all of this really leads us to the philosophical core of the entire debate. When you strip everything else away, it boils down to a clash between 2 fundamentally different ways of looking at the value of a human life. On one side, you have the quality of life argument. This view is all about personal autonomy, suggesting that a life with extreme, unending suffering might actually be worse than death itself. But on the other side, you have the inherent dignity argument. This view holds that all life has an absolute internal value, and that things like illness or disability don't take away a person's dignity. This story, shared in our source, it just perfectly captures the essence of that second argument. It's this idea that maybe true dignity isn't found by choosing when you die, but perhaps in experiencing compassion and love right at the very end of your life. So far, we've really been looking at this through a mostly Western lens. But what happens when you look at this debate in a completely different cultural and social context? Let's turn our focus now to the view from India. Well, according to our sources, the legal and social landscape in India is, well, it's pretty clear-cut. Euthanasia is not legal. And unlike what we see in some Western countries, there seems to be widespread opposition in society to changing that. And just look at this data from a 1991 survey. It really shows how overwhelming that opposition was. I mean, across every major religious group, there was near universal rejection of the whole idea. That paints a starkly different picture from the trends we've seen in parts of Europe and North America. So let's just quickly recap what we've covered. We've seen that euthanasia is a really complex term for intentionally ending a life. We've traced that historic and pretty shocking shift from do no harm to state-sanctioned killing. We've looked at the slippery slope argument through the case of the Netherlands, and we've unpacked that central unresolved conflict between quality of life and inherent dignity. Ultimately, after looking at the history, the arguments, and all these examples, this entire massive debate leaves us with one profound and deeply personal question we all have to think about. Where do we, as a society and as individuals, draw that line?
Thank you for watching this session. If you found this lecture useful, do like, share and subscribe to Ganga Education. Keep learning, keep growing and stay connected for more law lectures.